So when you think of lobster bisque, you know, you think of a couple main ingredients here. You're thinking of the lobster, which is the star of the show. You're thinking of the tomato paste that kind of makes the broth itself. Thinking of the creamy, silky flavor that you get that kind of just kind of punches you in the mouth here, that really gets the flavors going. And a lot of people think that lobster bisque is hard to make. There's a lot of ingredients. It's really not that difficult, and I'll show you how to make it here in a few quick steps. So the real question is, who's hungry? So from the last video you guys saw when I made the lobster tacos, I used an extremely large Florida spiny lobster. The remainder part of the lobster was the legs, the head, and the antennas that we're all going to use to make the broth and get the meat out of to use for our bisque. Here is the rest of the large lobster that was caught. Also using this other lobster. It's around maybe 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. So to start out, you're going to want to get a very large pot that I'm going to use to make the broth in. We're first going to have to break down our lobster. This part could get a little squeamish to some people, so if you guys want to skip ahead. The first thing you're going to want to do is remove the legs. The second part that's going to want to be done is you're going to remove this antenna portion, which is a knuckle. You can discard the skinnier section. So you're going to get a small knife and make these incisions. You kind of just push out and remove them. So now you're left with kind of the main portion of the head. There's actually a lot of meat in this area right here in the head. So what we're gonna do is kind of split it in half so it fits in the pot. As you take the shell off, you can see all the meat that's kind of left inside of the head. Use all these shells and put them in the pot because it's gonna kind of enhance the broth. After you place all your lobster within the pot, you're gonna want to get some onions and some celery and throw them in there. I'm using 1 small yellow onion and 2 stalks of celery, or sticks of celery. So once you have all your lobster put in here, what you're gonna wanna do is kind of fill up your pot until probably halfway. So once you've brought your pot to a boil with all the celery, the onions, the lobster head, the legs, you're gonna wanna reduce the heat down and take the actual tail out of the lobster that you have. Once the tail of the lobster kind of turns this red color, as you can see here, you kind of know it's almost done and it's gonna finish cooking later in your lobster bisque. So once you reduce it to a simmer, you're gonna want to put a heaping amount of salt in there, some pepper, some thyme, 4 or 5 cloves of garlic, and 2 or 3 bay leaves to kind of flavor the broth that you're gonna have for later on. Once you've added all your spices and ingredients, kind of give it a good mix, make sure everything kind of gets mixed in there. Then again, let it simmer for 40 minutes and come back to it.
Take one.
I need a drink here. Alright, so once you have your pot simmering for 40 minutes, let me just show you what is going on in this situation. Oh, the smell that's coming in this kitchen right now is literally unreal. Unreal. This that's coming on. So once that is all simmered down, red in color, delicious smelling, we're gonna take it off the heat. So once it's off the heat, you're gonna want a bowl. You're gonna wanna get a bowl and get all of your lobster that you have in here, all the big pieces, and kind of place in here because we're gonna have to take the meat out of it. So a lot of people, they don't use the head of the lobster. Let me just show you the meat that's gonna come off this. Just that people just kind of miss. Just all that, just no one ever takes advantage of. So once you've got all the meat and all the lobster pieces that you can actually get meat out of, disregarding the shells, you're gonna wanna strain this pot into another pot because we're about to put some tomato paste in there and some other herbs and seasonings to kind of finish off the actual broth that you're gonna use. I hope I don't have too much liquid. Oh, this is gonna be so good, so good. So once you've kind of got all the lobster chunks out of it and you've strained it, what you're kind of looking for in the strain that you have are any remainder of the hard pieces of lobster that you have. And the one thing you want to take out of there is the bay leaves because you don't want those. And then all the lobster stock that you've made, pour it back into the main pot that you were using So now, once you have it in your big pot, you're gonna wanna add a couple of ingredients here. You're first gonna wanna add tomato paste. Oh my God, I got tomato sauce.
A few moments later.
All right, so we're back from Publix. So add 6 ounces of tomato paste. You're gonna wanna add some paprika, and you're gonna wanna add some rice to thicken up your bisque farci. And the reason you're using rice, because it's actually a natural thickener for the lobster bisque. A lot of people use flour, but rice is actually what you're supposed to use. And then you're gonna wanna let this simmer for 30 minutes until all the rice is cooked. You'll know that because when you press it to the side, it'll kind of mesh together, be smushed. So the lobster that you have, just kind of pick apart and try to get as much meat out as possible. All right, so after you have your lobster kind of de-shelled, you've taken all the meat you possibly could out of, you're gonna end up with kind of a bunch of lobster. There's probably like 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds of lobster that I have here. Make sure you don't have any hard parts in here. Like I have this, for instance, I got a hard part, so just kind of toss it away. And then the one thing I want to show you guys is what's going on in this pot here. Again, your pot's gonna be on simmer for the last 30 minutes. Let's kind of take a look at what you kind of have at the moment. So the liquid you have should have reduced down quite significantly, and you can see that the rice is going to be, really soft, really malleable, and it should really start thickening up. So the next step what you're going to want to do is take your pot of liquid off, get all the liquid out of your pot, and put it into a blender. So what you're going to want to do is kind of make this into kind of a creamy type paste of the consistency you kind of want. You don't want to overblend it, you don't want to underblend it. You kind of want the rice and the liquid to combine to make kind of a nice soupy type texture here. So once you've taken your bisque farci out of the blender, put it on simmer again, and this is where you're gonna add your heavy cream, a little bit of sherry or wine, and then whatever heat you want. Say you want paprika or cayenne pepper, chipotle powder, whatever you want to do to kind of bring up the notch of how hot you want this bisque to be. I'm gonna let that simmer for around 10-15 minutes. The reason for that is to, again, bring everything together and to burn off the alcohol that you put in there. So while you're waiting, chop some parsley up so you can top it. So 5 minutes before you're about to start plating your lobster bisque, the lobster that you have peeled and de-shelled, throw about 90% of that into the actual bisque so it can heat up. Save the other portion of that lobster to kind of top it with. All right, so once you've waited 5 minutes after putting the lobster in, take it off the heat, and it's time to plate. Make sure you mix up your bisque before plating because all the lobster you put in there is going to be on the bottom. So this is kind of what you end up with, a nice creamy bisque. So, let's give it a taste here. And that's good. So kind of the first thing you taste is the creaminess that's in the bisque. We used, I believe a cup of cream. Really gives it that flavor that you're looking for. It really feels good in the mouth. I know that sounds weird, but it does feel good in the mouth. Then you got the perfect lobster. The lobster is cooked perfectly, it's steamed. You cooked it nice and slow, so it's not hard. There's no chewiness, it's nice, it's soft. And again, I've sprinkled a little bit of cayenne pepper on top. The thing about making lobster bisque is it is very time consuming. Letting those things soak in the pot for that long really enhances what you're trying to eat. Lobster has a really good flavor, and this honestly enhances the flavor that lobster does have. It's more lobstery than lobster, if that even makes any sense here. So that's a wrap to the video here. Let me know what you guys kind of think. Again, I'm new on YouTube, so if anything really helps, please like and subscribe, because now I'm trying to grow the channel a little bit here. I'm here to just make some good food for you guys, show you guys how I do it. Some of the recipes that I have, they're a little different than other chefs out there. Again, like and subscribe, leave in the comments if you actually made the dish, any dishes you want to see me make. I'm kind of curious what you guys want to see, and I try to please the crowd here. Again, thanks for watching, and the one thing is, stay hungry, everyone.